and welcome back to Adulting Anonymous. My name is Kudzai, your host, and I am so glad you could tune in. We at Adulting Anonymous are celebrating Women's Month by profiling different women we admire who are doing the damn thing and who are just making big moves in their respective industries. So, today on our pod, we have the honor to have I say doctor, I did not stutter. I have Dr. Musa Donia Sorombe, who is a young academic who became a doctor of philosophy in industrial psychology in 2017 at the age of 23. And when she qualified as a doctor, she was the youngest doctor, PhD wise, in the country. Wasn't it in Africa? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, I'm just having like I'm going through slowly so people like listen. She was the youngest PhD holder, and she's currently a senior lecturer at University of Free State in Bloemfontein. She specializes courses in human resource management and industrial psychology, and she also supervises postgraduate research. When she's not doing awesome things in the academic world, she travels around the world to present research papers. She is a keynote speaker for the Women's League, the ANC Women's League. She helps out. She's got different organizations that she works with just to empower women and to, to strategize and formulate policies that basically empower women. And to summarize her, we can call her a leader, an inspiring leader, and I admire her so much. So, welcome to Adulting Anonymous.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was such a long bio, guys. I had to summarize it, but
That's
listen, there is
actually the
no
short
amount to.
version.
That's a short version. I literally left out so much, but you get to hear it as we speak to her. How are you doing, Doc?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Ah, you are most welcome. How's it been? The last time we spoke, we weren't exactly under lockdown and everything. How's it been going on your side in terms of the new normal and everything? How's everything?
Yeah, it's been a very interesting adjustment, obviously. But as human beings, I believe we are meant to adapt. That's how some concepts like evolution came into play. Although the type of evolution right now I think we're going through is just adapting to a new type of situation, like you rightfully put it, the new normal. And obviously when lockdown started and it was initially dubbed a 21-day period, a lot of us were
Mm.
foolishly
We all
or
thought it was
naively
coming to an end in
thinking,
21 days.
no, like seriously, no, and the thing is, I would like to believe that a lot of us did, kind of like anticipate that it would prolong beyond the 21 days,
The
because
21 days, yeah?
in the first place, if we look at where the virus originated from, that's China.
Mm.
They they did have a 21-day lockdown. They like they're
21 days. What is
still like they're
21
still working
days,
from
fam?
home. I mean, right now, I know a lot of people. Those a lot of our friends who are there in China teaching. They still say
Mm.
they're working from home, and this is how many months in, because their crisis
They've had it
literally
the longest, yeah.
last year, and we're almost in the eighth month of the year, and a lot
Shucks.
of their institutions are still working from home. So who were we to think that
To
in
think
21
21
days
days, mate. I remember when it started, everyone was so excited. I mean, it was exciting to work from home.
yeah,
And people just thought, there's an end date to this thing. After 21 days, we'll go back to work.
yeah,
And now people are so tired that they just like, you know what, whatever. Are you
that's
tired of the
true.
lockdown?
No,
How are
honestly,
you enjoying
it's a 50-50 for me.
it?
I think this whole work from home thing has always been so appealing for a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
who've never actually had the experience, off working from home. And then when you actually, have the opportunity to work from home, then you realize it's such a scam because you end up
You
like
work longer
you
hours.
work longer hours. Your computer is right by your bedside all the time. First thing you do when you wake up is you're checking emails, making sure you haven't missed anything, important. And then like you literally stay you're on standby, and there's nothing
You
like
literally at
after
work
4 p.m.
24/7.
No, I promise you. So it really is a scam. The only nice part though is that when there's like online meetings and so forth, especially because our internet connections sometimes really let us down
Mm,
when we're on these platforms like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Skype and all of
mm.
that, and then you have to like turn your videos off, so you don't have to worry about like maybe dressing up halfway, the top
Yep,
half, and then
yep,
getting into
yep.
situations
I
where
would sometimes I actually only shower
yeah,
when I'm like done with work. I'm like, oh, it's lunch. Maybe I should take
exactly.
a shower.
Absolutely. And they're not even gonna know. So that's the beautiful part. And also just like being able to get work if let's say you've got to start work at 8,
Mm.
you can virtually be at work at 8 even if you woke up at 5 minutes to. That's nice.
True, true,
No
true, true.
traffic.
Yes.
Like
No
all
traffic, no dressing up, wasting
yeah,
time, all
it's
that jazz. Yeah,
nice.
it does have its pros and cons. I hope it becomes, I think I'm also like with you on the 50/50
Yeah,
because I genuinely
yeah.
I feel better when I'm not facing work people.
True.
If I
I
can
wish
get my job done
exactly. If we could
without
have like
talking to you.
exactly. Like it would be nice to have like 3 days work from the office and then two work from home.
To work. Yeah, I'm actually being more ambitious and hoping that we actually start like we will lean towards like a 4-day working
Yeah,
week like
no,
Finland, and
definitely.
then it's like
Yeah,
2-2.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
overworked, but anyway. So please introduce us to who Dr. Musa is. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Let us in on who you are.
Okay. Like, it's really interesting when you like get a specific question a lot, but you still always struggle with how to
To answer
answer.
it.
Yeah. Okay, so I basically grew up in Botswana, in Gaborone.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I
Mm-hmm.
did all my primary schooling and my high schooling, and yeah, like it was an interesting time, obviously, because I believe my primary school and high school education really contributed towards my, let's say, my expedited academic progression. That
Mm-hmm.
because in primary school I skipped a grade, so that's grade 3. And then in high school I also skipped grade 10. So a lot of people ask, like when they try and do their math and
How did you become a doctor at 23?
yeah,
Oh, huh.
the
Like I'm smart. That's how.
and then I had another person say to me, the only way that would be possible is if you were literally born in a classroom. So, yeah, like I would have to be born in a classroom.
In the
So,
class.
because all these other years, they're not accounted for. But like I've just mentioned, that
Mm,
one of the reasons was because I cut 2 grades in primary school and high school, and then of course also entering the tertiary education system at 16. I was also able at postgraduate level to expedite um, my studies as well. It was mostly due to financial constraints. However,
mm.
when you're doing something for one reason and then you just
And
end up striking gold along the way, you know?
yep,
A lot of
that's what God does. God
yeah,
just you think it's a mistake or you think it's but then it's actually working to your for
yeah,
your favor. So you grew up in Botswana. So I asked this question because you know how when someone achieves something
Mm.
there's like a war as to which country claims an individual, like who does she belong to.
Oh
So
my
I
goodness.
noticed on the internet your situation was a bit tricky. I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
recently, Shasha, the Amapiano singer, she recently won the BET award,
Hmm.
and she literally registered herself as Shasha from Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
and she however her career obviously bloomed in South Africa. The genre that she specializes in is majorly and is from South Africa. So when she won it, it was, no, it's she's definitely representing Zim. And then they were
Yeah.
like, no, she's South African. Now you guys want to claim her, but when it came to voting, you were not, blah blah blah. Then I remembered there's a situation, like I got like deja vu because I remember in 2017 when you qualified as a doctor and it was written Zimbabwean born, Botswana,
Yeah.
what?
Raised.
Botswana raised,
Raised.
South African, South
Yeah.
African tertiary. And people were like, so no, she's definitely South African. And they're like, Botswana's like, no, she's from Botswana. And then the Zimbabweans are like, but then if someone is born in Zimbabwe and she speaks blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
let's hear it from you yourself and you. Let's clear
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
speculations, wars. Which country do you rep?
I think
Say it with your chest.
I think I've actually just accepted like not to kind of like box myself into being owned by anyone, honestly,
Yeah,
because
global
I,
citizen.
I think that's also what just makes who I am, you know? Like I'm really
Mm,
proudly like none of these countries I would say are less significant in terms of the contribution in making me or allowing me to become, let's say, who I have become right now.
mm,
And I
mm,
don't want to give more to any other and take
mm.
more from
That is
the other. So I just describe myself as very African,
a global African citizen.
very African. I think you have,
No,
if
that's
you can strongly identify with three countries, three African countries, that's like that for me. Like I think I on Africa Day celebrate more than anyone else because I'm almost like quintessential of what it means to be African.
no, that's true because um like you're saying, you can't lean towards the one country because for in each and every season of
Yeah.
your journey in becoming who you are right now, each country and the environment and whatever it had to offer was right at that moment. Like we know the different challenges that the different countries face.
Mm,
So if you were in Zim during a certain time, it might not have worked out the way it did, as opposed to you being in South Africa and vice versa, or in Botswana
yeah.
and so on. So that's a safe answer, very African doctor. Yeah. So a PhD, how does that feel? A woman with a PhD. Walk us through that. How do you feel? Do you
Um,
feel like you've attained success? Are you done? How? Because you walked us through how you got it at such a young age, but the process itself, like just walk us through that. What did it involve? What did it cost you? What were the highlights?
mhm. Okay, so for me, I think one of the greatest lessons that I learned through the entire process that culminated in me like achieving or accomplishing this specific accolade was that you can plan, but ultimately, God decides what He wants to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
with your life because specifically, looking back on my life, and this is also why I tend to, in most, let's say, interview settings, there's always that question that comes at, especially towards the end. So, what's next for Dr. Musa? Like,
Yeah,
what's going
yeah.
to happen in 5, 10 years? And I always
Mm.
give basically the same response. And I say, 10 years ago, if you had asked me that I would have studied all the way up to doctoral level, I would have laughed in your face.
Yeah,
However,
yeah.
you make your own plans, and a lot of the time, we're so set in our plans that we don't perceive the opportunity that's in the failure of the plans that we have set for
Where we
ourselves.
have made. That is powerful.
And
Say that again. Say that again.
oh
Say
my
that again.
goodness.
Oh my
I
god.
have
The
this
last one.
thing. I have this thing where I forget what I said, and then sometimes people are like, "Oh, a quote by Dr. Musa." I'm like, "Did I say
I
that?"
didn't say that.
Yeah. So I actually literally forgot what I just said.
No, okay, anyway, but then to paraphrase you, you're basically saying you can never
Hmm.
um plan ahead. So there's a quote I heard yesterday that
Mhm.
actually just summarizes what you said yesterday. I was
Mhm.
like watching some movie, and then in this movie she was writing an essay. What do you like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And she's like, perhaps the earth was made round so that we would not see too far down the road.
Mhm.
And you are basically saying that's actually for a good reason, because you may miss the opportunities that are currently in your, when you don't meet or when you don't achieve the goals that you have set for yourself. There are opportunities in the, I put this in inverted commas, in the failures or the plans that don't succeed. So that's what you need to be present in, and that's basically where you how you came about with
Yeah.
regards to your degree.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And for me, it was I was just like, like every other young person after acquiring, a bachelor's degree, perhaps the only postgraduate qualification you will really personally have a drive to pursue is your honors degree, right? Because you're like, listen, too many people have a bachelor's degree, so let me go for the honors as well. And then once you get the honors, honestly, you're just thinking, listen, I need to
I'm
start
done.
making money.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta work. I gotta work. Like,
Because who's going to be paying the fees beyond now? And, I
yeah.
need to start to see a certain progress taking place in my life as well. So I was just like
Mm,
most young people. After my honors degree, I really did, want to enter the world of work. But one, my age was an encumbrance because I thought of myself as, especially being in my specific field, human resource management and industrial psychology, then I have to go manage a division where obviously I'm responsible for, even like the, let's say, training, development, and employee
mm,
relations of people who are much, my senior in terms of years.
mm,
And at that time, I was like 19 years old. So I'm like, no, let me just continue,
yeah.
with school. But also, I had, made an effort to apply for jobs, but I also asked myself, am I gonna go home and sit while waiting for a job to
Mm, to
materialize,
come up.
or
Yeah, yeah.
do I continue with school and given the opportunity? And then many may say, perhaps you were afforded the opportunity or you had options to say you could still continue in school. But honestly, a lot of people don't know that when I enrolled for my master's degree, my parents had literally told me that this is as far as we can take you, honors. And
Mm,
beyond will you'll have to see for yourself. And at that
mm,
age, I started to, find things to do. I actually worked at the financial aid office at the university where I was studying for some time, trying to raise money, for my master's. And I was actually fortunately at the time able to register without having, paid the required fees, because they obviously looked at my results, and that
mm.
really motivated my case. And I just said, no, I'll come up with the money during the course of the year. And I honestly had no idea how that was going to happen, but it was better than
Aw,
sitting at home, and
yeah.
our African parents, they'll be like, ooh, yeah, you're here sitting at home and you have a degree.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
So
And then
I
it's,
always
why aren't you out there looking for a job? You're lazy, etc. etc.
absolutely, but you're making an effort. So I decided not to make a passive effort. I decided I would make the effort of job hunting while at least advancing my qualifications because
Mm,
I honestly believe that we're past the era of the supposedly you'll be overqualified scam.
yeah,
Honestly,
yeah,
this
yeah.
age, and I got that a lot, especially from people of who are not of our generation, because it,
Yes.
that that phenomenon actually really existed before, where if you study too much before entering the world of work, you're obviously going to be too qualified. But these days, it's much different to how things were previously.
Mm,
So I decided, you know what? I'll see when we get there, even if it means not disclosing that I have these other qualifications at some point. But I was adamant that I was not gonna go sit at home.
and
So
sits
that
at
was,
home, exactly.
the main aim was not to be at home and be a burden. So I ended up, pursuing my master's, and then I was sure, no, now with a master's, it should be much easier to get a job, and
Mm.
still, it
It
didn't
was it was
materialize.
hard. It was hard. And what change did you observe? Was it because you were young, or was it because the job market was generally bad, or what do you
Um,
think contributed to that outcome in the job space?
Looking back now, I can say it was literally only because that was the designed path for me. Because
Mm,
if I consider, the one thing that actually used to set me off a little, in as much as you always want to support your peers and your classmates and those who you've come up with, and it's nice to see them, getting that first job and so forth. But sometimes there's that little inner voice that's like, but I did much better than this person in class and they got a job
exactly.
and I didn't.
Yep.
I've been
Yep.
applying, like we've applied to the same jobs actually, and they took them.
Mm,
My transcript is better than theirs, my CV is better than theirs. How come they got it and I didn't? And then you
yeah.
realize that sometimes it's just that it's not your path. So celebrate
Yeah.
that person because it's their moment, it's their time. You don't know what you're lined up for, and sometimes we spend
Mm,
so much time looking at other people's grass that you're deprived of the process of watching your own grow. And it's actually really interesting how ultimately the very people that I was like, oh my goodness, like this classmate of mine is so fortunate they got a job and they're doing
mm,
well. Now they just got a car and everything. And then
mm.
later on, they reached a stage where they were like, they wished they had carried on with their studies because they really
And got to
admire
the end.
really
Yeah.
admire the path that I took. So I think that's why it's even so important for us as young people to avoid the trap of comparison.
Mm,
Because
mm, mm.
each of
Preach.
us, each of us has our own path, and as long
Yeah.
as you're trying to create a rubric or a benchmark off of someone else, you will definitely, forfeit your own unique path that has been set
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. And then you end up not living in purpose because you're trying to live a replica of something that you think should be yours, and whilst you're not embracing your own path. Oh, that's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep. Yeah. So you are a young woman. You're young, and you are in education. So, what would you say the role education played in you being empowered? You spoke of financial constraints at some stage in your journey, and you obviously got to a point where you achieved your PhD and you started working. How did that empower you, and what would you say the link between education and just women empowerment is?
For me, honestly, I believe that how it has specifically empowered me is it takes me way back to a time before, everything that ended up falling into place and still, continues to fall into place because you never actually really arrive, right? But
Mm,
it's
mm,
important to
mm,
celebrate also the milestones that you achieve on your way to the supposed arrival. And the arrival,
mm,
unfortunately, is actually death. So we're always pursuing something until we reach the arrival or the destination that
mm.
is death. So that
That,
means living a purposeful life at the end of the day.
mm,
You can never say
yeah,
I accomplished everything as long as you still have breath in your nostrils. You owe it to
you
the
still
one that's
have.
given it to you to continue to make something useful of your life. So
Mm, mm,
honestly, for me, when I look back, like I said before, to a time before things started to fall into place and make more sense, I consider some of the things I had to tell myself, and a lot of it comes, a lot of actually achieving the successes that you have kind of like established for yourself or set out for yourself. It comes with having to tell yourself certain things, condition yourself, create a certain mindset as well. So for me, one
mm.
of the things I always had to tell myself was, your time will come, your time will come.
Yeah,
And especially as a young woman, you reach a stage where the success, especially of, let's say, our counterparts, males who supposedly show interest and pay attention to you, it can
yeah,
start, you start to think to yourself, okay, but why do I have to struggle so much or waste my time hustling so much? After all, with our previous generations, our women, primitively
yeah.
were expected to just look forward only to marriage, and then the man will supposedly take care of you and so forth. So you start to ask yourself, you start to tell yourself sometimes, that no, at least I've actually made it this far. I've acquired an education. So, I mean, I've done better than a lot women in our former or prior generations.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it
And
just,
that's always the goal, right? To do better than our predecessors. Yeah.
of course. And then you're like, no, and I mean, there's no harm in me entertaining this guy with this nice car.
Literally, because I'm gonna get my own.
But and that's exactly the thing now. To say, I always had to remind myself that no, I'm not gonna be involved with someone else and ride off of the waves of their success. I need to create my own first.
You need to create your own. That's
Get my
hectic.
own
That's
stuff.
hectic because that vibe or that mentality, like it pushes you and it puts you on a different level. Hey, and you might find that certain male counterparts actually get intimidated by women with who move like that, because it's a more, oh, you think you're good on your own, you
Yeah.
think you're better than me, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And we know how the male ego works. How did that then, like, thinking like that, when you started thinking like, I just need to get my own success and ride my own wave, how did that affect your dating life or your romance
Um,
situation?
yeah.
See what I did there? I just inserted that one there.
No, no, that's one of the things that even other people, and again, it's always, our predecessors, like the generations before us, they were used to a certain way of life, and some of the things they say to us in our generation were truths in their time, but are not necessarily applicable to the time we
Us.
currently live in, you know.
Mm, mm.
So, they'll tell you things like, you're studying so much, like no one is gonna No one is going to turn their
No one's
head.
gonna, yeah. Especially in the Shona culture.
Yeah.
Who's going to want to marry a woman who's so educated? They won't afford your lobola, your rora, etc.
I understand the struggle. So I constantly had to be reminded by, especially these elder people that you're kind of like narrowing the pool of choice in terms of like potential suitors or candidates. And at some point, like I said, I thrived a lot on telling my own truths to myself. So
Mm,
despite what anyone else would tell me, if someone else told me you'll be overqualified, I had to tell myself otherwise. If someone told me you guys will be intimidated by you, you're narrowing your pool, I had to tell myself my own truth, and
yeah,
there's nothing wrong with a narrow pool. It means, and whenever a pool is narrowed, it means you're literally filtering all the nonsense.
yeah.
Remain quality.
You're refining your population because you're getting rid of the scrubs. You know the nah,
Absolutely.
scrubs.
So you remain with a higher grade of quality at the end of the day, which is obviously a preferable circumstance. There's nothing
Mm,
wrong with having a narrow pool. And I always used to say that, like, out of the billions of people in this world, there has to be one who will not be intimidated, but will see more of a partnership rather in what I
yes.
have to offer, who will not be intimidated by my ambition, but will rather, be supportive of it. And the one thing I
Mm,
believe, as young women, especially, we need to guard against is, unfortunately, the world, especially previously, would mostly attribute the way a woman, let's say, conducts herself or even her success. They will attribute it, or lack of success, they would
mm.
attributed to the men in her life. So you'd
In a
find
life,
that
yeah,
perhaps she would have gotten married too early for her to have achieved all these other things on her own. And then after
yeah.
she gets married, right, then she gets that degree, then she starts a career which is successful, and she starts to show that she indeed is a light in her own right. And then people would say, oh, it's because she got a good man. Like he's the
It's
one,
because she
he's
got
the
married to
reason,
this
yeah,
guy.
he's the
Yeah.
reason
Before
that
this guy, you didn't have anything, hey?
exactly. Not
Yeah.
acknowledging that before this particular guy, it was just that you didn't have the opportunity because obviously women got married much sooner previously, right?
Mm,
So
mm.
now I believe for myself it's more of an advantage having gotten the privilege to achieve whatever I have so far, because now even when people look at the type of partner, let's say, in my life, they will actually now expect that if anything changes, then now actually that person would be blamed to say he slowed her down. And that's always a good
Exactly.
thing, you know?
Exactly. She's always been a dreamer. She's always been a badass. So if something's wrong is going on,
That's his
blame the
fault.
guy.
Yeah. So, and of
Bec-
course, if things continue to go like accordingly as well, then she found a really supportive person who understood her vision and her ambition and supported that, which is one of the most wonderful things any young woman can get. Someone who will not stifle them, but will encourage them, to actually make them better than he found them before.
no, that's powerful. I love that. I love that. Hectic. Okay. So you spoke about your success um habit. You spoke about how you could keep telling yourself, to keep going, to not compare yourself with the next person. What are some of your success habits that you have on a daily basis that you still keep up to now? Because like you mentioned, you can never get to a point where you say I've arrived, because the ultimate arrival is death. So, what are some of your success habits that you have as an individual?
Okay, so for me, the greatest habit that I have cultivated is self affirmation. People always caution us, wise folk will tell you be careful who you listen to and the things
Mm,
that you believe about yourself, which other people say. But the truth
mm.
is, you would be your own greatest enemy, even more than other people. And that's why it's even more important for you to be careful what you say around you because you is listening, you know. So
Exactly. And you're listening 24/7. Yeah.
absolutely. You're always around you. So instead of worrying about, I need to block out negativity from other people, you need to block out your own proclivity or inclination to being negative towards yourself. And so
Mm.
that's why it's so important to affirm yourself. And that's one habit I have taken through into my adult life, adulting vibes.
Yeah.
Always
Yeah. Yeah.
affirming. I'm always
And
affirming.
we on this podcast we love how to tips on how to adult. So we're basically taking notes because wow, it can be a lot. So self affirmation is
So
a major NB
it's
factor. Oh,
key,
okay.
absolutely key.
What would you then say? Do you ever look back and say that you made a mistake here and you should have done, let's say, XYZ instead of ABC?
I think all of us have our moments of reflection. And when you
Mm-hmm.
consider your life in retrospect, there's always this that you feel, if I hadn't taken that corner or that turn, maybe I would have spared myself, a lot of drama and a
Yeah,
whole lot of other stuff. But then I think it's always important to focus on and to be grateful for where that all of that has led you now. Because some of
yeah,
the decisions that you have made, which have led you to today, you may not have had enough perspective to make those decisions had you not been honed and chiseled and, gone through the ringer. Those
like a
other,
diamond.
you understand. So the pressure a lot of the times is exactly what it takes to get you to a place of flourishing. So I
Mm.
think as human beings, yes, there's always an inclination. You wish you could scratch that one person out of your life. Like maybe one of your
Yeah, like I don't
absolutely.
know you.
Like one of these
Just
books where it's like you'd be like, what was I thinking? Like you know, when you tell people about your exes, like you
I
conveniently
don't have exes. I
you
don't have exes.
it's
I
always
refuse to acknowledge.
that one. Yeah, so it's one of those things, but still, like, if
Mm,
you're to truly even look at some of the things, those situations, taught you, you would realize that the good that you have taken from there has helped and, been a major contributing factor to where you are and who you are now. So I think, yeah, sometimes,
yeah, that is tough. You
yeah.
just gotta look back and say, that bad mistake was me being refined
I'm
and
learning.
being, chiseled. Yeah, the lesson
Yeah.
in the journey. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. What's your favorite woman anthem
Oh my
or
goodness.
female anthem?
Uh, Let me see. There's so many, like, really cool.
Three.
Yeah.
You don't have to choose one.
I think probably maybe Beyonce, who run the world.
Yeah, that is a good one. That is a good one. Around the world. Yeah. Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
yeah, just before we part ways, what advice would you give a young girl who's obviously aspiring to just to empower herself through education? It does get tough, when we're listening, when we're like at school. You can remember, if you can like reflect and look back, when we're in high school and then tertiary, or even just adult education altogether, everything about books is hard, man. Like each season, each stage has its own challenges. What advice would you give to a woman who's listening right now and just needs that extra push
Mm.
to, to continue and ultimately reach their goal?
Okay, so the advice I would give to young women, especially those still in pursuit of their academics, their education in any form, whether formal or informal, because life is just a school in itself, also, and like we were
Yeah,
talking about, it's important to reflect on the past lessons that that life has taught you, first of all, and even in the formal schooling context, it's important to reflect on every level that you have successfully completed, because think of it this way: when you were writing your, let's say grade 7, like
mm,
the exams that like make or break whether you go to
mm,
high school or not, that seemed like the toughest level ever in the world until you pass
mm,
it, and then you're now hearing from other grade 7s who be like, "Oh, grade 7 is so hard. Oh, the exams are coming up," and then you're like, "Wow, that's such a joke."
that's
Like,
nothing. Yeah, what do you
like
mean?
wait until you get to like grade 11 or grade 12, and then at that stage, grade 11 or 12 seems really tough, but once you've passed it, you're also able to look back and even think those who are complaining about grade 12 exams are ridiculous. And then you
Yeah, yeah.
get into varsity as well, and first year seems so rough, but you conquer, you overcome, you pass through first year, and all of a sudden you find yourself in your final year of study, and you realize that every single time you had to sit for exams, you were nervous. You did wonder if you
Mm,
could make it, but you still made it through. So that's why it's also important for us to always celebrate these little milestones, because they give us
mm,
and they strengthen us and encourage us that we can get through now, because what seemed difficult yesterday, we have already conquered
conquered.
and achieved. So
Mm,
it should motivate and inspire anyone to build on your previous strength, because you still are that person, and in fact only stronger to tackle whatever lies ahead. And always think of it this way, especially anyone now obviously pursuing tertiary studies: where you're coming from is further than where you're going. So just always think of
hectic
it that way, and that should give anyone strength to keep on going, because you don't want to start something that you
and not finished.
won't finish. Exactly.
Ah, the art of completion. Ah, thank you so much for the wise words, and thank you for blessing us on our podcast today. It was such a pleasure chatting to you, and it's always inspiring being around you. Every time I talk to you, I leave with the oh wow moment. So thank you very much for agreeing to be on the podcast, for imparting words of wisdom and sharing your journey. We really do appreciate it.
You
Any parting words,
rock.
literally anything. This is where you drop your mic and you're like,
Yeah,
peace out.
yeah, yeah. Like, I need food. I need food. Those are my parting words.
Like, bye. See ya.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's really been great, obviously, being a guest on your podcast. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to also just encourage someone. And, life is not always about the bigger impacts. Sometimes we want to get to the masses, but a lot of the things we do. And that's why I also just want to say hats off to you, the host of this podcast, Kuzai, for doing this initiative. Even if it's just one person who really gleans hope and light from this podcast, you are actually doing a work that no one else can do, and you could not be replaced or substituted on the face of this planet. So keep doing you. And we don't always
Thank you.
say, people may not always say that, this has been a lifeline between me giving up and continuing. But trust me, there
Mm,
is always that someone, and this type of platform is meant for people like that. So just keep on doing you, And thank you so much for
Oh,
your.
thank you. Oh my gosh, I love you. Virtual hug. Thank you.
Yes. You're